Ladies and gentlemen, due to the friendly reception to the last couple faction tier lists I've done, I'm going to keep it going for now. I did a lot of tier lists a long time ago, but now it's been years since I did those. They're way outdated. So today we're going to be looking at the Empire, a fan favorite faction. It's not quite as dominant as it used to be. It's still kind of a top tier faction in terms of Galaxy of Heroes, but it's not among the best of the best. If that makes sense, that might be contradictory. But my goal with these faction tier lists is to rank the whole faction within and compared to itself. So if a character is an S tier on this faction, in this faction, he might not have been, or they might not have been in another faction, or if we did a ranking of legendaries or something like that. So just try to keep it in context, and we're trying to have a more meaty section of the bell curve in B and C, and then comparatively less in S and F, and then A and D less. It's not always going to be a perfect bell curve, but I just want to throw that in there and get that out of the way. So we're going to start with F tier, and I'm trying to look at all game modes, but I kind of balance in my head the more important ones, like Grand Arena and Conquest on top. But so F tier, not too surprising for anybody. We got Krennic and Imperial Probe Droid. So these are just two I can find completely useless. Krennic, if they slapped their Imperial Trooper tag on him, who knows, maybe he'd have some use, but probably not. He has an Omicron for GAC, but he's one of those like Leia and Akbar that I just think no one should ever apply. Imperial Probe Droid doesn't really have too much of a purpose. Even when they gave it a Datacron that was like bonus turn, I think they did this recently, bonus turn whenever anyone else on the enemy team takes a turn, it still wasn't useful, still wasn't valuable, no one cared. Just really, really trash character, and I don't have too much to say to elaborate on how bad they are, but I find them useless. Next here is D. We got Snowtrooper, Stark, Magma Trooper, and Second Sister. So as of the recording of this video, which is when most people will watch it, close to when I recorded it, Snowtrooper and Stark are part of this forced Vader team on his Focus Datacron that you have to level all the way up and then you can't kill Vader. Doesn't seem like it's going to be good just from early testing. I don't know if it is or not, but there's a reason that they forced these two in it, because they don't really get used. Even in early game, the only real argument for using Stark is he's easy to acquire. I mean, he does some staggers, but overall, very unimpressive stats, unimpressive damage. He can help keep the Terminator Dream going with some buffs, but he gets knocked out extremely easily for a ton of other viable alternatives, and that's even early game. And then Snowtrooper doesn't even really make it in the list there. Snowtrooper, sometimes is used in an Iden team for people that like to use Iden. Snowtrooper is very easily acquired, so early, like beginning game, it might be where you see him more, but in general, he's not really even selected much for that Iden Versio team. So he just doesn't really get used much. Magma Trooper, once in a while, gets called on for some kind of theatrics with his turn meter gain. There's some kind of cheese that comes up for him, but in general, I think he's pretty useless. And then Second Sister, I do have in D because overall she is pretty useless, but what gets her like out of F, I mean, I don't know if I'd really put her in F even if it weren't for the ship, but her ship is pretty good. It's mainly an ability like the cooldown on the capital ship, and then I don't usually like to bring her in all that much. I mean, the buff dispel and the cleanse is really nice, so she's got a great ship. But I'm not fully ranking ships. It's a consideration, but it's more of a nudge as opposed to an entire consideration for a character. She's the one that doesn't even make it when you don't even have Reva, so she's just not really doing that well at all. Next up, we got C tier, and this is where you're going to see some characters then you might start trying to argue that they're B tier, or if you're crazy, they're higher than that. But this is really kind of role players that are getting something done. They do have some value even in late game or end game, but they're not necessarily super core to those teams. Are the ones that don't really make it on the squad in 3v3 when you have to cut two. And here's what we have. We have Stormtrooper. We got a lot of Empire tanks here. Stormtrooper, Shore Trooper, Nine Sister, Fifth Brother, Range Trooper, General Veers, TIE Fighter Pilot, Gar Saxon, and Royal Guard. So I didn't, just for your information. I didn't do a statistical breakdown analysis like I do for Galactic Legends, where I rank every single character in every game mode and then stack them up. It's just kind of a general sense. Is Veers better than TIE Fighter Pilot? Maybe, in a manner of speaking. So early game, you can do a lot of assault battles with him. But TIE Fighter Pilot, from my end game perspective, which is what I am formed by, as well as my early and mid game perspective with the Go Tanks account, TIE Fighter Pilot is valuable. You can put him in an Imperial Remnant team with Archer Moff Gideon. He does have a valuable ship that is good. And while Veers does have that value early game, he really falls off later because the game has really gotten away in PvP from Terminator trained teams. I don't think you really use Imperial Troopers in Rise of the Empire Territory Battle anyway. He's good in Darkside Geonosis, so he's kind of there. Gar Saxon, I could see some people arguing about that. He's kind of second fiddle to Imperial Super Commando. It's Imperial Super Commando's rework that makes him viable. He's not too crazy on his own. Royal Guard is a really solid tank with Lord Vader, but he is getting edged out, so he got pushed a little bit lower. And then down here, Range Trooper, I mean, I put him close to Veers because he is really valuable. He's not more valuable than Veers to that team because Veers has the lead, but Range Trooper is super nice, especially in assault battles, with the added chance of assisting and therefore generating more buffs and keeping the Terminator train going. Fifth Brother does make it on the Inquisitor team in 5v5, but to me, he's the first one I'd give the boot to. So you got, Reva, Grand Inquisitor, Seven Sister are the 3v3 team, and then fourth, I love Eighth Brother's damage, and he is somewhere in the B tier. But Fifth Brother, I mean, he's got some value. You could really argue that he's up higher here. All these characters are kind of close together, and I'm a little bit more or less indifferent to where some of these are organized, kind of like these 5 here. Ninth Sister definitely falls below all these characters. She is a tank, but Reva is the leader of the band and the tank, so she doesn't have a spot in that 5v5 team. And 3v3, unless you get a Datacron really juicing her up, which does happen from time to time, she's not really doing all that much. But she is useful, so she's not in D tier with Second Sister. She is the tank before you have Reva, and you kind of need her for, well, if you have Reva, you don't really need her to unlock Grand Inquisitor, but if you did it kind of the way they intended you to do it, you have to use her as a valuable tank. And then Shore Trooper and Stormtrooper. I do see Shore Trooper overall as a better character than Stormtrooper. The only thing Stormtrooper has over Shore is he's got the Imperial Remnant tag, but that's it. And I didn't want to give the nudge over Shore Trooper because what Shore Trooper has is a pre-taunt. And that's just something that doesn't really go out of style. That always has a little bit of value if you can find room for it. But they are just very similar, so I put them at the bottom of C. Didn't really feel right to put them in D, but I don't know. Let me know what you think. And now we're going to start to get to the actually pretty good characters. And for our B tier, we have a solid set of characters here. These are more in the role player category, but they are very important role players, and they will typically make it in a 3v3 team, or they have something else that makes them stand out to me. Eighth Brother, not in the 3v3 team, but he does some crazy damage on that Inquisitor squad. So he did make it into the B tier. And honestly, I don't know, if I had more room, some of these decisions came down to I was running out of room, and I didn't want to just completely jam-pack a tier, and if it made sense, if I could justify, I would. So Eighth Brother got the nudge up to B. Seven Sister 2, but they're really close. I like Eighth Brother more than Seven Sister. It's just she has the necessary healing function, and usually she's going along with Reva and Grand Inquisitor when you can only have 3. But when they're all together, they're really rocking out. They just have a really good vibe together, I guess you could call it. Death Trooper or Dark Trooper. He's slipped a lot, but I still put him in B tier just because of the insane damage potential he has. And every once in a while, I don't try to do these ratings based on any one Datacron that's out at the moment. But there is high potential for him. I do think he keeps the Terminator train going, and he really is that damage threat that makes that team a threat in the early game, and used to be a pretty good punch-up squad. So I think last time I did the ranking, I put him in like A tier or something. But he's definitely fallen down. So B tier it is for him. Same with Thrawn. But Thrawn, his biggest props to him, is partially that he does make it work in a Lord Vader team if you don't have clones. I have used him to great effect in that regard. Fracture is still a very valuable asset, and the way he does it is better than the way like General Syndulla does it, and then Leia. Those are very temporary. You can fracture someone and lock him down for potentially forever, which I think is quite valuable. And he is the fleet commander to a pretty nice capital ship. Definitely one of the top 6 or 7 that we have, so it does get used even in the very end game. But you know, I didn't want to push up too high. Death Trooper, you know, you could make an argument that he's above Thrawn, but I get a lot more use out of him in the actual lane game that makes the most difference with Imperial Remnant, with Archer Moff Gideon. He just does a lot of damage. His revive prevention I consider to be particularly valuable, especially in certain circumstances like Dathomir on TB, and then in Conquest, if you have some kind of pesky team that you really need to just prevent them from reviving, he's your guy. The Mass Dispel, I just find him quite valuable. And then I did put Imperial Super Commando in the middle of B tier. I'm not like, I'm pretty disillusioned on the high end of value for Imperial Super Commando. It seems just amazing. When it came out, I was just kind of like, oh my gosh, this guy's insane. And it is nice, but the only practical use I've personally found for it him in Kyber 1 is cleaning up like JMK or something. On defense, there's usually something that really wipes the floor with a Maul team, even with this damage. And, you know, supposedly they're a good General Skywalker counter, but the numbers have never shown that to be like super reliable. One great piece of value to them is Imperial Super Commando and Gar can go along with an Imperial Trooper team and really easily beat Challenge Tier 3 for Forest Moon, which is great because I slogged my way through it just this past week with a Palpatine Vader team, and Thrawn was in there, you know, Piet, Mara Jade, and it was quite difficult. That being said, just limited value I see for them, but that's still, I don't think I slighted him too much. I definitely don't think he's 18 material though. Scout Trooper, I think is fantastic. Top 3 on that Imperial Remnant team, always making it in 3v3 team with Moff Gideon. I gave Moff Gideon kind of a nudge over Scout Trooper because of the demoralized, the speed, you know, the Gidme potential is out there for mid-game players, not really so much end-game, Kyber 1 or 2, or probably even 3. But overall, just quite a good character. I love Demoralized. It's just such a nice mechanic. And Scout Trooper just does a lot of great stuff. You know, the Dispel, big damage, support. So it's just doing big damage in Conquest when you have Zealous Ambition. So a lot to like about Scout Trooper. And also, accuracy down on the basics. So she's been helping me out in recent Conquest a lot because they tend to want you to do a lot of obscure debuffs like accuracy down. And Darth Vader. Last time I did this ranking, I ranked him the second best Empire character. Seriously, like there is 2 full tiers now in between him or above him. I put him second for Empire. You can go back and find my old Empire ranking video. I don't know if I want to link it. It's probably too old for most people because I had a worse mic and I had the same camera. But you know, I don't know. I digress. He has really fallen so far. At this point, I think they need to undo the great nerf of 2021 for him because they really reduced his damage output, his multipliers. And it's kind of really hurting him. Like, they really slashed his damage, and he is not even making it on a Lord Vader team in most cases. Even on my small account, I almost benched him forever, except I put him on a Traya team instead of Darth Sion because I already had Vader, and once you get Starkiller, you kind of say bye-bye Vader. Even if you have Lord Vader now, he's not really, like, he wasn't even on that team to begin with. Before clones, I put Lord Vader, Piet, Maul, Thrawn, and, like, Royal Guard, so he didn't really make it. But he is quite valuable early game. He's got a good ship, which is always in use, and he's good for assault battles, and you can get things done that you would be surprised. Go see my recent assault battle video on Force Moon Challenge Tier 3. And then Iden, put her at the top of B tier. Still pretty solid. I don't see her on defense anymore in Kyber 1. It's been quite some time. Her ship is quite incredible, so that's more of a nudge up the B tier. But she does have some some good value in an early game. And her team is quite good if you devote the resources to her. People don't usually, because you're tearing apart her team and giving it to Dark Trooper Moff Gideon, like Death Trooper and Range Trooper and Scout Trooper. But she has good potential and she's got a great ship, so I thought she still warranted being in B. And now our second to last tier, we have A tier, with a few very notable groupings of characters, or maybe two kind of notable groupings. So we got Palpatine and Mara Jade closer to the bottom of A tier. We have all these new Darkseid clones and Tarkin in the middle there, and then Grand Inquisitor and Admiral Piet at the top. So first for Admiral Piet and Grand Inquisitor, I do just rank them in general above the rest of this field because of their enduring use and all kinds of game modes. Grand Inquisitor, while he is kind of lackluster compared to Reva, he is necessary for Reva to really do her best. He has a lot of the damage, a lot of the control, the torture, AoE, ability block, healing up, multiple hits. And in TW, his Omicrons are pretty beast, especially ready to die, insta-killing Jedi. So I do think he merits being towards the top of the A tier. You could probably like make an argument to expand my S tier. My S tier is pretty slow, and maybe you could bump a couple up, but I didn't really feel right. Like, I have a pretty tight S tier. And Admiral Piet, he does get the nod because while Imperial Troopers in their old form aren't necessarily that good anymore, he does find some use with Lord Vader, and he's quite valuable there. And he's allowed me to, like, I think he's one of the most valuable characters I can bring on that team. I feel like after Maul, he's the next one I'm putting on if I'm not using those Darkseid clones. And the big thing, and this is more than probably just a nudge, it's that he's the commander of the Executor, which is the second best fleet in the game. It can go toe-to-toe with the best fleet in the game. It's like one of the best defensive fleets, and on offense it can kind of take out anything with the addition of the Punishing One. It just became a whole mess. It's an incredible fleet. Next, I can talk about Palpatine and Mara Jade. Palpatine is a little bit lower than Mara Jade because while Mara Jade needs Palpatine to work, I think she is allowing him to be relevant, not the other way around. His lead is still valuable for, TW with the Starkiller team, if you have Juhani in there, and Mara Jade's Omicron, but Mara Jade is very instrumental in that. In Grand Arena, from an endgame perspective, I don't really use Palpatine anymore. That being said, I didn't feel like I could knock him out of A tier. I did knock his apprentice out of A tier, Darth Vader, which is sad. But I think he has more argument for relevance than Darth Vader because he does go on that Starkiller team, and for most players that aren't at the super end game, that's an awesome team that you can't go without. Yes, technically you could use Darth Vader as the Sith Starkiller team, but that's just not really the team that has come to be known as the standard team. But Mara Jade's Omicron TW is pretty awesome. I don't have it yet, just because we kind of grew past that, and I didn't have enough to spare. I know I'm terrible because I don't get all the TW Omicrons. But anyway, so yeah, I just felt like they'd be bottom of A tier. It still made sense. Now the new clones. So I did feel overall they did deserve to be in A tier because they are great with Lord Vader. Also, Tarkin is quite formidable on his own. In 3v3, with a couple of clones, he can mix and match a bunch of different combos. It's going to be quite the defensive team for the long haul. He's got his Omicron. CX2 has an Omicron. For the Grand Arena, Scorch does too. But it's going to be tough to beat unless you have some kind of special Datacron workaround. It is not an easy fight. Usually for an Empire team that's not like S tier, you can bring in Admiral Raddus, and he's just so anti-Empire, he can just knock him out. And that's not really happening here. They just have way too much going on. He's a fleet commander, but that's kind of like, meh, whatever. But there is something to be said for the fact that I don't try to consider the raids heavily because they're cyclical, but we are at this moment at the very beginning of a raid cycle, and it's going to be probably another 11 months at least that we are using these guys all the time. They can split up and max out top tier runs for 7.2 million among the 5 of them. which is just crazy. So that's why they're all kind of A tier and mid A tier. I didn't think I wanted to push them like into S tier because they are reliant on Lord Vader for the most part, but they are pretty good. Now, why did I pick this order? CX2 and Disguised Clone Trooper, I do think they are the 4th and 5th man on either of those teams. But Disguised Clone Trooper, I did give the nod over CX2 because when I'm using this team, I am more looking forward to a Disguised Clone Trooper turn than a CX2. And maybe that's not the best judge, but also when I'm facing them and going against them, I am more scared of Disguised Clone Trooper than CX2. It's probably that always lingering massive damage threat where they could just melt you, especially in the raid. It seems like, okay, melt. You didn't kill them right away, melt. You're gone. A string of 99,999 damage, and it's crazy. On the other end, I put Scorch and Apo above Tarkin because Scorch, I think, is extremely valuable wherever you put him in the Lord Vader Tarkin verse. He is the tank. He's extremely resilient. You really feel it on the team without him. Like, he's the biggest thing missing other than Apo. Apo is literally 2 characters, and he can't die unless Lord Vader, one of the chunkiest galactic legends, is dead first. So he is extremely valuable as a cheese on offense. And on defense, he's just the damage dealer. He's sick. Even without his Datacron, which I never had, by the way, he is the leader of the dark side Bad Boys clone band. So he is up there. I just didn't quite want to give him the nudge over Grand Inquisitor or Admiral Piet. So that is our A tier, and there's only one left. And that final tier is, of course, S tier, and it's really tight. And it's just 3 characters. Darth Trooper Moff Gideon, Reva, and Lord Vader. I think Lord Vader is pretty obvious. Even though Reva is fantastic and she can beat plenty of Galactic Legends, Lord Vader is, of course, the only Galactic Legend in this faction. And with his new band of Darkside clones, he has really risen up the ranks. Now, we're going to start to see more just his overall lasting value because he was propped up a little bit by an Apo Datacron, so we couldn't really see the full effect at the highest level because all these endgame players did have the Apocron, which was kind of crazy. But they are quite valuable on offense against a variety of Galactic Legends, and on defense, there's a couple key counters. If you bring in Leia will crush them. They're pretty great. In TB and Conquest, they're just an auto win in most cases, and they're not that data disk dependent, so it's just awesome. And then Darth Trooper Moff Gideon is the one I can see most people are being the biggest target for argument that he shouldn't be in S tier. I did consider putting him in A tier. 1, it felt like the S tier was a little too empty, and 2, he does really feel a league above the rest of this field. I am a huge fan of him. There are some Grand Arenas in Kyber 1 right now that I don't find a use for him. But he is extremely versatile with beating turn meter driven teams. Teams that can just hit you hard and start to pick you apart. Because he can revive everybody. Back when Jolie Bindo got his Zeta and he could revive an entire Jedi team at once, it was just an outcry of like unrealistic. By the time we got to Darth Trooper Moff Gideon, we were more used to that kind of thing, but just he could revive his entire team. He's extremely durable. He hits hard. He nerfs everyone else's damage down to basically nothing. If they get any kind of turn meter gain, their defense is flattened to the ground. You just do insane damage to them. I think he's just a Swiss Army knife. And the fact that he has TW Omicrons, they designed him in a way that he was still awesome in all other game modes, and you don't really need the Omicrons. They do make him fantastic and elevate his level in TW, but even without them, I just found him to be so useful at so many occasions. And speaking of important game modes, it's not just Grand Arena. Conquest is very important, and he is one of the teams that isn't one of the only non-Galactic Legend teams that I feel exceedingly confident in Conquest, because there's so many teams. The enemies you fight are at this point more so old teams for the general nodes, and a lot of those teams are very turn meter driven, and that is a nightmare for you in Conquest because they are on steroids for their speed. They get out fast, do so much turn meter, but he just nerfs them into oblivion for all that turn meter. He punishes them. He's very safe to get a 3-star. So he is just Conquest, Grand Arena, TW. I think he's fantastic. TB, I don't use him quite so much, but I think he's got some value there. So I do think he earned a spot in the S tier. It's a Conquest unit. He's really hard to get. Just an awesome team. It really does feel in the different league. I debated like kind of putting him off to the side here because he's not really on the level of Riva and Lord Vader. But for the purpose of the tier list, I think this still works out quite well and is kind of balanced, more or less. Where I think the argument is to be had is in kind of the mud of these middle tiers, where it's just kind of, I'm kind of like, at a point, I don't know. But in my mind's eye, I do think Dark Trooper Moff Gideon is an S tier character. So that's the Empire. Long live the Empire. Used to be one of the best factions, like a top 2 or like 2-3 faction. Now it's kind of like 5, 6, or 7. Still a fantastic faction, but you know. Anyway, I'd like to know what you think. Thanks so much for watching. Share your opinion down below, and I'd love to read it. And yeah, I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.